Hello, everybody. I hope you're having an amazing day, and I hope you have a good Christmas and a Happy New Year. This is my UFC breakdown and end of year review. I am Workbreak MMA, and I will be giving out 8 awards as well as coming through some of the most interesting storylines and topics of the year of 2025. So, without further ado, let's get started with the video. This year there was 42 events with 13 pay-per-views and 29 fight nights across 11 different countries, with champions going 8, 6, and 1 in title defenses. We also had a lot of first-time champions this year in Magomed Ankalaev, Jack Della Maddalena, Kayla Harrison, Tom Aspinall, Khamzat Chimaev, Mackenzie Dern, and Joshua Van, as well as former champions Alexander Volkanovski, Alex Pereira, and Petr Yan, all regaining their titles after losing it at some point in their career. And who could forget about the two all-time great fighters currently in Ilia Topuria and Islam Makhachev, moving up to win a second belt in a second weight class, becoming just 2 of the 11 fighters to ever hold a belt in 2 different weight classes in the UFC. 2025 had a lot of memorable moments throughout the year, so before I get into any awards, here are some of the most memorable storylines and moments from some of the fighters this year. Arman Tsarukyan pulls out of his title fight with Islam Makhachev UFC 311. In January, due to what Dana White officially ruled a back injury at the time, he retracted those statements in later interviews, saying that he was missing weight and he was unable to make weight, therefore the fight was canceled. Adding to the things Tsarukyan has done to be an easy contention for Dana White's least favorite fighter in the entire company. Now for what is quite possibly the biggest storyline going into 2025, Jon Jones versus Tom Aspinall. Since November 11th of 2023, when Tom Aspinall won his interim heavyweight championship, he's been calling out Jon Jones. Where Jones, in that time frame of November 11, 2023, got injured, healed from his injuries, proceeded to call out a 3-year retired Stipe Miocic coming off a KO loss. Tom had to defend his interim title, which was only the second time in UFC history someone had to defend an interim title. Then Jon Jones defends his title against Stipe Miocic. And going into 2025, people were extremely hopeful that this fight would be made and be the biggest UFC heavyweight fight of all time. Jon Jones' huge asking price of reported $30 million for showing up to the fight was met. Tom Aspinall started 4 training camps in a span of a year for Jon Jones, thinking that the fight would eventually be announced. But Jon Jones simply wants to retire and not fight Tom Aspinall. And in June of 2025, Jones officially retired after 19 months of anticipation for the biggest heavyweight fight in history, and it was all for nothing. The first episode of Bryce Mitchell's podcast, Arc Insanity, where he expressed that he would go fishing with a certain dictator in World War II before he got on drugs, while defending some of his reasonings for the things he did. And that is literally all I can say without getting in risk of being in trouble. The UFC settling a $375 million antitrust lawsuit, paying out the full amount for resolving claims the UFC was engaged in anti-competitive practices to suppress fighters' pay. You might wonder, how in the hell are they going to pay this one off? They're going to do it with a 7-year, $7.7 billion deal with Paramount Plus, which includes all UFC fights and content for just a monthly subscription, and completely eliminating the pay-per-view model, changing the way you'll watch UFC forever. Now, as of just recently, Ilia Topuria, being one of the most dominant fighters in recent UFC history, now announced that he will be stepping away from the UFC for some time due to a rather messy divorce with his ex-wife, with some claims being made that, if true, would damage his image forever. And it isn't confirmed yet, but he might have to relinquish his title if this goes on for a rather long time. And the last piece of interesting news I'm going to get into, a fantastic year from the Dana White Contender Series and the Ultimate Fighter as well. Dana White Contender Series starting off week 1 very slow with only Bosingor Susarkayev winning a fight. Then every card after that delivering a lot of fun prospects for the future of the UFC. While this might have been the most talented pool of fighters on a season of The Ultimate Fighter in the last 10 years, with Joseph Morales, Daniil Donchenko, and also somebody who competed on both The Ultimate Fighter and Dana White Contender Series this year, Emmanuel Rodriguez, who are all extremely exciting prospects for the UFC. Now, for giving out my awards for the 2025 year, I have 8 awards to give out. I am very excited for them. And if you guys think of any ideas to give out for awards for next year, let me know down in the comments. But now we got 8 awards, and let's hand them out. The qualifications for Knockout of the Year is very clear. It just has to be a very beautiful yet violent knockout that you could watch over and over again without getting sick of it. And there are 3 nominees this year. The first one will be Lerone Murphy's spinning elbow knockout over Aaron Pico. And the second nominee will be Mauricio Ruffi's spinning wheel kick knockout over Bobby Green. In a year with so many great knockouts, it was hard choosing 3 to get my nominee, but my third and final nominee will be Quinlan Soukill's knockout over Nasrat Hasparas, where he head kick knocked out him flat on his face. Now, I don't think a whole lot of people will be surprised at my pick here. Mauricio Ruffi's spinning wheel kick knockout over Bobby Green was by far the KO of the year, maybe one of the best spinning wheel kicks in the history of the UFC. His fluid striking style made the spinning wheel kick just flow perfectly, one motion, real quick, barely scraping off the side of his temple of Bobby Green, causing him to fall forward onto his face, and he was out for a solid 1 to 2 minutes, flat on his face. One of the truly most beautiful knockouts you will ever see in the UFC. I highly suggest going to watch it, and this is my 2025 Knockout of the Year. The second award I will be getting into for this video will be my Submission of the Year. And the qualifications for the Submission of the Year, it just has to be a very beautiful and dominant submission, one that you don't really see too often, but also just executed very beautifully, very quick, and just a really good submission. Now, with the first nominee I'll be getting into, it'll be John Silva's very quick latch up of a ninja choke over Bryce Thug Nasty Mitchell. Now, my second nominee for Submission of the Year, and first one coming from the Dana White Contender Series. We have Wes Party Time Schultz submission over Mario Menage by Soloev stretch in the first round. And now my final nominee for Submission of the Year, we have Merab Dvalishvili's championship submission over Sugar Sean O'Malley by North-South choke. I was actually there for the event. It was a very dominant submission. My 2025 Submission of the Year will go to Merab Dvalishvili's North-South choke over Sugar Sean O'Malley. With the high-level championship main event, Merab showed that he is one of 2 bantamweights that you can consider the best of all time at bantamweight. The only critique in his game was that he has not been able to finish a fighter in any of those fights, going to decision and dominating a lot of his opponents. But with the previous 5-round main event that they had at the Sphere in Las Vegas last year, Merab found a way to capitalize on previous grappling mistakes of Suga that he made in their previous fights, finding and cruising the North-South choke in the 3rd round, absolutely dominating Sugar Sean in the meantime. My 2025 Submission of the Year. Now, my third award I will be going over today, it will be the Comeback of the Year. The qualifications you have to have for this is you had to have had extreme adversity early on into the fight, losing the fight very clearly and in severe danger of losing the fight or potentially getting finished, and then making a miraculous comeback and either finishing the fight or just winning the fight outright. Here are my nominees for Comeback of the Year. My first nominee for Comeback of the Year will be Jared Cannonier's amazing comeback against Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez, where he was knocked down multiple times in the first 2 rounds and ended up getting a KO finish in the 4th round. My second nominee will be Yuri Prohaska being down 2-0 against Khalil Roundtree. to only Yuri Prohaska him in the third round, swarming him and knocking him out in the third. And my third and final nominee will be Cesar Almeida's knockout over Abdulrazak Al-Hassan, where he suffered a lot of early adversity in the first round to get a really solid knockout later in the first. My winner for 2025 Comeback of the Year will be Yuri Prohaska's KO finish over Khalil Roundtree. Being down 2-0 clearly in the 3-round fight, Yuri couldn't get going early. He was slipping a lot in his footwork and was very hesitant because of the speed and power of Khalil striking early. But Yuri was making very good investments early with his teep kicks to the body or front kicks to the body and a handful of very strong body shots as well with his boxing combinations. Khalil is known to slow down later in the fight, so Yuri pressures him right away in the third round, getting him to throw a lot of heavy shots early, missing him and making Khalil constantly move and circle around the cage to get away from Yuri Prohaska's pressure, which just gassed him out after about a minute and a half into the third round, making his shots much slower and easier to see for the amazing or unorthodox counter-striking of Yuri Prohaska, which is signature violent mauling striking pressure style, being too much for Khalil in the third round, finishing him and KOing him brutally in the third round, winning my 2025 Comeback of the Year. My fourth award of the video will be my Rookie of the Year, and the qualifications for the Rookie of the Year are very simple. You had to have made your debut in the year 2025, and you had to have had some rather impressive showings out in this year. And without further ado, here are my nominees for Rookie of the Year. Ateba Gautier will be my first nominee for Rookie of the Year. The dominant Cameroonian middleweight has had 3 first-round knockouts in the UFC this year. My second nominee will be Quinlan Salkild, making his second appearance in this video. And this year he had 2 first-round knockouts and a decision win, which I was also there live for. He is my second nominee for Rookie of the Year. Now for my third and final nominee for Rookie of the Year, and the only one with 1 fight, Ethan Ewing, who on 48 hours notice beat one of the UFC's most hyped up prospects at 135 pounds. He made an absolute statement in his debut and is going to be a prospect to look forward to in the future. Quinlan Salkild will be winning my Rookie of the Year in 2025. And I just want to say that I understand if you make Ateba Gautier your Rookie of the Year, but the overall level of competition is just night and day difference. Quinlan Salkild, with 2 massive viral knockouts and a dominant decision win against improving competition each time he stepped into the cage. His first KO was against Anshel Jubilee in 19 seconds with a straight right and ground and pound in February, following up with a dominant wrestling performance against Yanal Ashmutz in June, where he showed that he can truly mix it up and isn't just a deadly striker. He dominated in the fight with his takedowns and control. Then in the third fight of the year against a top 25 lightweight in Nasrat Hasparast, he ended up knocking him out with one of the most beautiful head kicks you will ever see in the first 2 minutes and 30 seconds of round 1. Rising over 30 to 40 spots in my rankings and multiple other websites' rankings throughout the year. He is scheduled January 31st against the really tough Chinese boxer in Rong Zhu in Australia at UFC 325. I think he can make another statement win there, and this is why Quinlan Salkild is my 2025 Rookie of the Year. Now for my 5th award of the video, and it is going to be a very hard one to pick. It'll be my Fight of the Year. And for this, the qualifications are very simple. It just has to be a very, very tough and grueling fight where it's back and forth. Both fighters have their moments, and it is overall an extremely competitive fight as well as a very violent and brutal fight as well. Without further ado, here are my nominees for Fight of the Year. My first nominee for Fight of the Year and my second nominees to come from the Dana White Contender Series. It is Adriana Luna Martinetti versus Mark Vologden on Dana White Contender Series. This was an absolute brutal fight. Please go and watch this fight. And for my second nominee for Fight of the Year, we have the very high pace Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval, which was just an incredibly high output fight and had a lot of damage dealt out as well. And now for my third and final nominee for Fight of the Year, we have my dog barking in the fucking background. Now, my third and final nominee for Fight of the Year, we have the very brutal fight between Chris Duncan and Mateusz Raubecki, who Mateusz Raubecki never puts on a boring fight ever. Same with Chris Duncan. A very brutal fight. Now, for my 2025 Fight of the Year, it'll go to Joshua Van versus Brandon Raw Dog Royval. This was an absolute amazing fight from start to finish. All gas, no breaks. Both fighters landed over 200 total significant strikes in a 15-minute fight, which is just an absolute crazy pace for a boxing and a striking fight. The story leading into this fight was also amazing, as the formidable number one contender Brandon Royval, who was just coming off a win against Tatsuro Taira at the time, was facing the short-notice 23-year-old 10th-ranked surging star in Joshua Van. It was overall a beautiful, chaotic, violent fight where they traded rounds, and it was just an overall amazing fight all the way to the end where Joshua Van knocked him down in the final 10 seconds. Now, all these fights could win Fight of the Year. They were all amazing, and truly all of you would win it if you just went and watched all three of these fights and watched a few more of the fights from this year as well. But Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval is my 2025 Fight of the Year. Now, for my sixth award that I'll be handing out today, it'll be for the Fight Night of the Year. Now, the qualifications for this are very clear. It has to be a very well-performing card all the way from the prelims to the main card and the main event, with entertaining scraps and some memorable moments throughout the card. So here are the three nominees for Fight Night of the Year. My first nominee and the most recent fight night on this list, we have UFC Fight Night Doha, Qatar, Aman Sarukian versus Dan Hooker, with a co-main event of Bilal Muhammad versus Ian Machado Gary. Overall, very good card, very deep card, delivered very well on the year. My second nominee for Fight Night of the Year will go to UFC Fight Night Saudi Arabia, Robert Whittaker versus Reinier de Ridder. This was a very deep card as well. Had Piotr Jan versus Marcus McGee on it in the co-main event. Had a lot of fun fights on it. Had a few nice finishes and a few nice moments as well. Overall, a really solid card. Now, my third and final nominee for Fight Night of the Year will go to UFC Fight Night France, Imavov versus Bohalio. They had a very entertaining co-main event in BSD versus Mauricio Ruffi. The card delivered very well, very deep, had a lot of solid finishes, and had a very good amount of debuts as well. Very solid card overall. My winner for Fight Night of the Year for 2025 will go to UFC Fight Night Doha, Qatar, Aman Sarukian versus Dan Hooker. The UFC's first time in Doha, Qatar, they delivered, starting out the card slow, with the first two fights going to decision and not really being too entertaining. It was followed by four impressive finishes with KOs from Ismail Nurdayev and Luke Riley, while Asu Almavayev got a slick standing guillotine submission, and Abdulrakam Yakiayev absolutely ran through Rafael Sequeira, spinning wheel kicking him, head kick dropping him, slamming him on the ground, and getting a rear naked choke. And all that happened in just 30 seconds. With complimentary fun scraps from Alexandre Taporia and Nicholas Dalby winning, all of that just on the prelims. Then on the main card, delivered with 5 finishes in the first 6 fights. 4 finishes in a row, starting off with Kyoji Horiguchi's spectacular return to the UFC, followed by 3 first-round KOs from Waldo Cortez Acosta, the Caveman Miktabek Orablai, and Volkan No Time Uzdemir. With the new wave of welterweights continuing to shine in the co-main event, where Ian Machado Gary's decision win over a former champion, Bilal Muhammad, was a very impressive win to show that he is a top 4 fighter in the welterweight division, as well as Arman Sarukian showing levels to the ground game against Dan Hooker, getting a second-round submission win. This card, top to bottom, was extremely entertaining. Every fight on the main card delivered, making it the best fight night of 2025. Now, for my second to last award of the show, we have the best UFC pay-per-view of the year. Now, the qualifications for this are the exact same as the UFC Fight Night one. It has to be a really good card all the way through, from the early prelims, main card, all the way to the co and main event of the evening. It has to deliver the whole way through. So without further ado, here's the 3 nominees for UFC pay-per-view of the year. My first nominee for pay-per-view of the year will be UFC 320, Ankalaev vs. Pereira 2. This card had a very entertaining co-main event in Dvalishvili versus Sandhagen, as well as the amazing moment of Alex Pereira getting his championship back. Overall, an amazing card as well, and delivered on almost every single fight. Now, my second nominee for UFC pay-per-view of the year, we got the last one, UFC 323, Merab Dvalishvili versus Petr Yan 2. Overall, it was an amazing card with some really good prelims and a good main card as well. The only thing holding it back being the co-main event, with the main event being an amazing comeback moment for Petr Yan, and that was my second nominee for UFC pay-per-view of the year. Now, my third and final nominee for UFC pay-per-view of the year will be UFC 317 International Fight Week, Oliveira versus Topuria for the vacant lightweight title at the time. It was a very good card the whole way through, had some really good fights overall. Main event delivered with Ilia Topuria solidifying himself as one of the 2 best fighters in the world, and Alexandre Topuria continuing his dominant streak. Overall, an amazing card. Now, for my pay-per-view of the year, it'll be 317, Charles Oliveira versus Ilia Topuria. International Fight Week in Las Vegas was a very fun week, with an early prelim opener between 2 fun heavyweights scrapping it out, and then Jacoby Smith getting a dominant submission win over Nico Price. While the rest of the prelims had 3 first-round finishes, with Terrence McKinney getting a 55-second submission win, Jose Delgado getting a 26-second knockout win, and Gregory Robocop Rodriguez's decapitation of Jack Hermanson, with Tracy Cortez getting a really solid win as well in there. With a really good main card opener of a fun prospect versus prospect fight where Peyton Talbot showed massive improvements, and an Unk versus Unk fight where Beneil Dariush won after some early adversity. Then follow that up with the fight of the year in Joshua Van versus Brandon Royval, and the co-main event where Alexandre Pantoja continues his reign as the flyweight champion with a dominant defense. And in the main event, it was a bittersweet moment seeing Charles Oliveira get knocked out halfway through the first round, but Ilia Topuria stamps his claim as one of the top 2 pound-for-pound fighters in all of the world. This was my 2025 pay-per-view of the year. Now, for my final award I will be handing out today, it'll be, in my mind, the most prestigious award that we have. It'll be the Fighter of the Year. And today, there will be 5 nominees for the Fighter of the Year of 2025, and the qualifications are very clear for the winner. You had to have had an amazing year of 2025 against some amazing competition and some dominant wins as well. So without further ado, let's get started with the nominees for Fighter of the Year. The first nominee will be Merab the Machine Dvalishvili, who went 3-1 in 2025 with 3 title defenses, and all of them were amazing, entertaining fights, and he is the first nominee for Fighter of the Year. My second nominee for Fighter of the Year will go to Joshua Van, who went 4-0 this year and had some amazing fights as well, becoming the second youngest UFC champion ever. No matter what way he won it, he is still the second youngest champion in UFC history. Now, the third nominee for Fighter of the Year, and the only woman on the list, we have Valentina Shevchenko, who went 2-0 this year with 2 title defenses against 2 top 5 pound-for-pound women in the world. This was a very easy nominee for me, and she is my third nominee for this year. My fourth nominee for Fighter of the Year will go to Yuri Prohaska, who went 2-0 this year with 2 third-round knockouts against 2 top 5 light heavyweights in the UFC. He is a very entertaining striker and had some very entertaining fights this year. He is my 4th nominee. My final nominee for Fighter of the Year this year will go to Islam Makhachev, who went 2-0 this year with a title defense at lightweight and claiming his second belt at 170 pounds, becoming one of the 11 fighters ever to become a double champ in UFC history. This one I think will give a lot of people a shock initially, but with the way Joshua Van won the title, Merab's final fight of the year being a loss, and the competition level between Islam Makhachev and Yuri Prochazka overall being slightly worse than Valentina Shevchenko's, I think Valentina Shevchenko is the fighter of the year in 2025. She spent 50 minutes in the octagon with the consensus best flyweight in the division outside of her in Manon Fiorot, and she fought the best strawweight ever and top 3 pound-for-pound women's fighter of all time, Zhang Weili, dominating her to a 50-45 decision. Winning 40-plus minutes in those 2 fights against 2 top 5 pound-for-pound women's fighters currently in the UFC was just a major reason why I had to pick her. Were the fights barn burners and instant classics? No. Although her fight with Fiorot was a very good one and an entertaining one in my mind. The women's flyweight division was the only division in the UFC not to change champions in the year of 2025, and that was because of Valentina Shevchenko. She showed technical and strategic dominance at the highest level that we have ever seen in women's MMA history, making her my pick for the Fighter of the Year in 2025. Now, with the awards part of the show finished up, I want to get into a few other topics for the rest of the video. First, we're going to get into some of the notable fighters that have retired in the year of 2025. The first person to retire is the fan favorite Dustin Poirier, multiple-time title challenger and owner of one of the best resumes in UFC history, fighting some of the best fighters of all time at 145 pounds and 155 pounds throughout his career. He is arguably the best fighter ever to not win an undisputed UFC title. Next, we have Jon Jones, former light heavyweight and heavyweight champion, and one of 3 fighters that you can consider one of the greatest MMA fighters of all time. Next, we have a true fighter's fighter in Jose Aldo, former UFC featherweight champion and the final WEC featherweight champion. There will be nobody ever again like Jose Aldo, some of the most punishing leg kicks in MMA history, and truly a one-of-one fighter. Next, we have Dominick Cruz, the first ever UFC bantamweight champion and last ever WEC bantamweight champion. A true pioneer in MMA, and his style is still the most unique in MMA history. There will be never another Dominick Cruz in the UFC again. Now we have former triple champ Henry Cejudo, Olympic gold medalist and 2-time UFC champion at flyweight and bantamweight. Truly one of the most decorated combat sports athletes of all time. The last fighter I will be listing in the retirements is Paul Craig, who had legendary jiu-jitsu skills for the UFC and had wins over 3 former UFC champions. Now for the next part of the video, I will be going through one of my biggest hopes that the UFC follows this year, and it is getting out of the apex and exploring the globe more and having more fights across more countries. Preferably more in the USA, Eastern Asia, Europe, and South America, with some of my suggestions being the other countries in Japan, South Korea, Ireland, Scotland, Poland, Spain, Argentina, and Ecuador. Most of those places the UFC has already been to, but they just haven't gone back to since the travel restrictions in early 2020. And some of the U.S. spots maybe go towards the East Coast more, maybe go up towards Boston again, which they didn't go to last year. Explore maybe the Carolinas a little bit, see what you can do. And those are just some of the places that I hope the UFC can go and explore next year. Now we'll be going over some of my predictions for the year of 2026 in MMA. Some of them being crazy predictions, some of them being slightly realistic. So without further ado, let's get into some of them. My first big prediction will be that the men's flyweight division will have 3 champions in the year of 2026. I am a major fan of Joshua Van, but Tatsuro Taira, Kyoji Horiguchi, Manel Kopp, and of course the former champ Alexandre Pantoja, who did only lose by injury, are very tough competition for Joshua Van. And we really don't know how that fight with Alexandre Pantoja would have played out without the injury. So with the steep competition at flyweight, I think the belt can possibly have 3 different champions this year. My next prediction for 2026 is at some point in the year, Khamzat Chimaev will have to take some time off to heal, and there will be a interim middleweight championship fight at some point in the year of 2026. This is something that Khamzat Chimaev has had issues with in the past. He hasn't really had issues with it recently, but it's always been something in the background of his career. He could get sick, could have to pull out of a fight. I could see an interim championship fight being made for the middleweight division in 2026. My next prediction, and the one that I hope is true out of all of them, is that Tom Aspinall will return and defend his belt twice in the year of 2026 at least. I think he can get back. I believe that Cyril Gahn fight will be made again and that he will win that fight. And then I potentially think that he could win another one against potentially Alex Pereira or maybe even Alexander Volkov. But I think Tom Aspinall will defend his belt at least twice in the year of 2026. My next prediction for the MMA year in 2026 is that the hottest MMA prospect, 4-time Division I champion and Olympic gold medalist Gable Steveson will make his UFC debut on the UFC White House card. I believe it just makes a lot of sense having an Olympic gold medalist for the USA on the White House card in front of everybody, and what might be one of the more watched cards in recent memory. I think that he would be an amazing addition to that card, and I just think it makes a lot of sense. My final prediction for this video will be in 2026, the Ultimate Fighter will have both female and male contestants in the tournaments this season. Normally there is 2 tournaments. I believe one will be male, one will be female. The first time since 2022, the last 3 seasons have been all male fighters. And my predictions for the weight classes being on the show will be men's light heavyweight and women's bantamweight. Both of those weight classes just aren't really too deep with prospects and contenders. I believe that both of them could use a fresh surge of competition in the UFC. Hello everybody, I am Workbreak MMA. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. Make sure to like, comment, and share to one of your buddies. And this will be my first annual MMA award show. As long as this channel is going, I will try to do this every single year. Hopefully incorporate new awards and a way to have subscribers interact more with the awards if I end up getting a little bit bigger around the end of the year. I hope all of you guys have an amazing Christmas and a happy New Year, and I will be posting a video again soon. I hope you all have a great day.